Welcome, folks, to the Devoxx UK 2025 speaker interviews. I'm having here with me Daniel Garnier-Moiroux, a famous speaker on Spring Boot topics. Come on, Daniel. We've been seeing your presentations at Devoxx Belgium and other great conferences, and you always get good feedback, good grades from the attendees, and people are very happy with the insights that you share on different topics. So first of all, I want to ask you, how have you been doing? What have you been doing in the Spring Boot ecosystem? And if you can share that with our audience, would be awesome.
Yeah. So, hi. As Anna said, I'm Daniel. I work in the Spring team, and I do a little bit of open source. So my main focus is on security. So Spring Security, your favorite Spring project that doesn't scare you at all. There's a great Devoxx UK video about it from last year if you want. And lastly, in the past few weeks, we've been working on Spring AI MCP security.
I was wondering if you would get involved into that, since security is your favorite thing, and well,
Yes.
we all know MCP has some shortcomings, and if we want to use it with Spring AI, we'd better have a more safer way to use it.
Exactly. And then we're discovering the usage, the entire community, not just us in the Spring team, but like the entire MCP user community is discovering what do we even need as security in MCP. So it's a very fast evolving landscape. The one where you send a link to the spec and then a week later someone tells you like, I can't find what you're talking about because the spec has changed from last week.
Oh, wow. Okay, that fast.
Yes.
Well, let's start talking a bit about your sessions, because folks are going to watch those online, and I think that you are one of the few speakers, if not the only one, that has here a deep dive. And it's a very important deep dive because it's on Spring Boot and testing.
Exactly.
Am I correct?
Yes.
So we've been using Spring Boot for a while as Java developers, and what does your deep dive bring as new practices in terms of testing? What is Spring Boot, what it has there in its dependencies and extensions as great thing to work on from testing point of view?
Yeah, so I think the main goal of the session is it came from the idea that I go to customers, I go to community meetups to discuss, and oftentimes there are people who have, a test suite that takes 15 minutes to run. And so they don't run it very often. And when I look at these tests with them, it's usually like a test architecture problem or maybe overusing some of the tools that were not designed for this, right? Because when you start a project on start.spring.io, you get one free test. And then usually people start from this test and keep building on it without necessarily understanding the ins and outs. And so it's great when you're starting, but as you go, you have to put some thought into this. So I kind of want to, help the community think a little bit about this, see the trade-offs, see how they can use the tools we provide, and then also, try and share some of the lesser-known things we package. Because Spring Boot is very opinionated, so we have some Spring-specific tools, but we also bring some libraries that we think are a good fit for writing your tests. Of course, you can come with your own, but here are some cool tools you could use that you may not know about, and here's what you can do with them, when to use them, and so on.
So it's mostly best practices that you thought that are good to be known based on your experience when talking with different developers from the customer side, so people interacting with real production life, which is, again, a great thing to know how to test things like in production, like production needs it, right?
Right.
But also like bringing the novelty of Spring Boot, and it's good to know that frameworks are, even in cases where you think that that's not going to be redone or much to be done with it, because you think that Spring Boot has had testing parts, testing extensions for a while there. So why is there anything new? But it seems there is.
Yeah, there is. We're always adding things as we interact with the community. So I guess one of the recent addition, it's not new, but like we have now a great interface, a great integration with test containers. So it's not a brand new technology, but how do you use it in a Spring Boot application? How do you use it to test a Spring Boot application? What affordances do you have to configure it, connect it to your application? Also, there are a few changes we add to Spring. So change the APIs, for example. So there's the famous, everyone who's tested a web app has used mock MVC.
Yes.
Don't do that anymore. This is so 2024. Now you will be using mock MVC tester. We have a more fluent API.
Oh, wow.
So that we overhauled the REST template in the Spring production code. Now we encourage you to use the REST client. Well, we have the same for tests, right? Mock MVC is the old way. It's going to be here. It's going to be maintained. But the new, more, or I like these APIs more, the mock MVC tester, much more fun, much more fluent to use, much more discoverable. So, yeah.
Oh, that sounds cool. Okay, that's a great addition. So you spoke about test containers and the fact that we can use that with Spring Boot, and we've seen that for a while, at least in a conference presentation, is that people are following along how the test container story evolved. Do you feel that there are some new practices that can still be shared around that in terms of doing integration testing or end-to-end testing? For example, do you touch that in your deep dive, or?
So I think I do discuss that, right? Because just showing test containers, you can go to the docs and then copy paste the thing. But if you take the code from the docs, it has certain assumptions. So for example, it's going to be, I think the docs or like the test that you get from Spring Boot, it gives you one instance of a container per test context. So if you have a context where you run multiple tests, you get one container. But if you start doing many different test contexts, different ways of configuring your app, then you get one container per context. And then suddenly it doesn't fit in your CI machine anymore because you have 32 Postgres databases running at the same time. And so just even clarifying this assumption and saying like, well, see, the test containers folks, they show you can do a singleton pattern and then have one instance of that. But then what are the trade-offs? How do you use that? Is stuff that I explore in the deep dive.
It's very, very useful. But let me ask another question. It's more like, is there anything new about the same old unit testing that doesn't require any mocking, or it's just that the same thing? We don't need anything new from the Spring Boot side or any support from that?
So on the unit test, so this presentation is pretty much centered around Spring Boot tests.
Oh, yeah.
And so like Spring Boot, so it's more of an integration test thing.
Yeah.
The unit test is, I don't cover this because I don't think people, there's a little disclaimer in the presentation saying like, man, you probably don't want to just do integration tests everywhere. You want to do, unit testing that is not bound to Spring, right? Your domain should be Spring agnostic, and so when you test your domain, you test it outside of Spring. And so I just say, well, go to YouTube and you say testing Devoxx and sort by number of views, and you'll get great talks that explain how to run these maybe lower level or Spring agnostic tests.
I think that Victor Renta covered this in a very good topic. I remember that.
And he did a refresh of that, a deep dive at Devoxx Belgium in 2024. So that's our recommendation. Yeah.
Okay, so Victor Renta's talk for the unit testing and other parts that are not covered in Daniel's talk.
Exactly.
So we talked a lot about testing, but you have another session on your favorite topic, security. And this one is on Passkeys.
Yes, Passkeys.
So what is happening over there in the Spring Boot ecosystem and the Passkeys?
So Passkeys, they've been around for a while now, and they're this thing of like authenticating without a password. It has existed. I think Apple coined the term in 2018, but it took a long time to stabilize and get adoption. And since, I would say 2024, we see the major players pushing Passkeys. So Google is offering you to register a passkey, and you can do it on GitHub, on Azure, on all the major services. And so in the Spring Security team, we've had a ticket open since I think 2018, 2019 about integrating passkeys. And last year we finally got to actually implementing it. And so in your Spring applications, you can now allow your users to log in using passkeys. So using their phone, They use the biometric to unlock the phone, and it can also unlock log you into a website without sharing biometric information.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's very, very cool.
And I like this flow. So in my demo I show how I use that on GitHub, like the different ways you can use a passkey, because it's not new, but it doesn't have great adoption so far. So in a room full of developers, only 10% have even heard of passkeys or know what they are.
Oh, really?
And there's usually like 5 or 10 people who actually use passkeys. Do you use passkeys too?
Yes,
hey.
That's why I'm surprised. But again, this area of like how spread is the adoption of passkeys is, I didn't know that it doesn't got that much adoption, because I was imagining that more people are going to go with this flow of, I don't know, not requiring, let's say, the password anymore, and going passwordless. And
passwords are well entrenched, and it's hard to displace them or add onto them. But I think that's also why I want to do this, and why we do it in the security team. We think it's a great security benefit, right? Because you're not doing password. Passwords are terrible for many reasons. But also, I want to share and show people, hey, I use this daily on my GitHub, on my enterprise login, and you can too. And also, if you're interested and you have requirements to put it in your application, then here's what we give you. Here's the toolkit for building your passkey experience.
Nice. It's really cool to know, and that you can do it with such a popular framework like Spring Boot. I think you're still one of the major shareholders of the spread in the Java applications, and this is amazing. There's been people that invested so much time into learning the framework, and now they can find a new way to evolve the security of their application to a much more seamless way of working for their end users, because that's actually the goal of such a framework, is to be great for developers, but also to be great for the end users as well, right? So happy developers produce great applications, right?
Hopefully. But we agree with this. And when I first got interested in passkeys, it was before we integrated it in Spring, and it's a complicated topic. So having the Spring Boot twist on it, where you have sane defaults, a minimal configuration surface to get something working, and then the extensibility of Spring Security, that you want to perform additional security checks, then we give you the interfaces to do this. But this is much more advanced, right? We want to get the adoption growing a little bit, enhancing security practices and.
Yes, indeed. Enhancing security practices. That's something that never stagnates and never stays the same, because we know that bad actors are there all the time, and the criticality of things and the bad things that can happen are even more spread nowadays. I mean, I kind of have a small subscription to some newsletters that notify me on data breaches and stuff like this. And it can be a little bit daunting when you get the newsletters and you see and you scroll, and how many things get exposed, or you see how different things that you thought they were secure, they can be exposed. And yet there are days when I'm a little sad, like, oh, nothing is safe. But on the other hand, I think we can still resist the bad actors by looking at talks like yours and implementing security the right way, by following the experts, by following the advice of those that are making Java, the JDKs, and of course the frameworks and the libraries that can show us the way to do it the proper way and give us some standards and best practices. So Daniel, thank you so much for being at Devoxx UK.
Pleasure.
And for sharing all these insights with our attendees, but also with our online viewers, and getting to know better and how to get a better advantage of what Spring Boot gives us as a framework. Really happy to have had you as a guest.
Thank you. If
you have any final words for our listeners, now is the time, because we're going to end this conversation. But we invite the people to watch your talks. Definitely.
Contribute. Opening issues, pull requests, even like giving a thumbs up on the issues you think are important, it's an important signal for us to decide what we do next. So you're welcome. We're working with the community. That's why we come to conferences. That's why we chat. That's why we do all of this. So we're open. Feel free, reach out, and we'll learn from you. That's going to be great.
That's a great advice. Thank you for bringing this up,
Pleasure.
especially in the conference context. Yes, folks. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the videos too.